completely flattened one night. Thank goodness when no one was there. Joy, and some of you know this, had nothing good to say about war. I'm summing up what she said to me. People were hungry, absolutely terrified for weeks because of the bombings, and politically she thought it was stupid nonsense, her words, with most people suffering because a few people were fighting for money and power. When the war ended in Europe, they could finally turn towards their future. So Bill and Joy married on June 8th, 1945, a marriage that lasted for almost 71 years till death did them part. Joy and Bill enjoyed life again. Joy loved to travel, and all of Europe was open to them after the war. Julian was born in 1948, and they frequently took the train to London to spend evenings listening to symphonic music and seeing art. Joy had been born with hip dysplasia and was able to go to Germany to have an operation that helped. She always praised the Germans, so recently enemies, for their medical precision. In 1957, Bill was offered a job in Montreal. They traveled over on a ship, and Joy loved ships. Andre was born in Canada in 1961. The young family moved into a big house owned by Dr. Henry Morgan Tyler, who was a leading Canadian humanist at the time. And among other things, but one thing that Joy found important was that he performed abortions when no one else would. But there, Joy, even though she was active in the Humanist Association, focused on family, which did include getting everyone in the family to help mimeograph, fold, and staple the Canadian Humanist Association newsletter on the kitchen table every week, and cooking up lots of food for gatherings they hosted with invited speakers and great conversation, and with Bill leading everyone singing while playing the piano. At least that was their idea of a perfect party. Joy worked in a library and went to school, but Andre remembers her devotion to her family. She always wanted the best for all of them in every way. Andre has fond memories of her love for craftsmanship. Every year, for instance, when he was a kid and he had no money, she would help him make Christmas presents. One year, they did an elaborate project that involved tie-dyeing worn sheets and tracing Shakespeare quotes from the wallpaper in the kitchen. Then they cut them up and made them into banners. Another year they made candles, and a third they made mobiles. But Joy was always making things. She was an accomplished cook, and everyone in the family had their favorite foods. We know that Bill loved her brownies and Andre loved her donuts. But what I didn't know, all of us I think knew she was a great cook, a baker especially, but she was an accomplished seamstress who made all her husband's suits when he was working as an engineer, including, Andre remembers this specifically, a very stylish safari suit in the 1960s. And she loved to go on cruises, and she made herself some beautiful clothes for the cruises, and one that was the most memorable, a beautiful dress in which she hand-sewed literally thousands of beads on it, each one by one. But they didn't spend money on things like TVs. Bill probably brought a colored TV home from work, they think. But in the background, there was always music and news on the radio. Now, in 1977, Bill's firm moved all of them, to Nashville. Now, he and Joy thought they were kind of going to the boonies after living in Montreal and London. They joined this church, and Joy worked here more than a decade as the secretary. She helped start a women's group that was the first to welcome an out lesbian couple, and created a feminist library. Some of you here remember those days. Joy's role here while she was secretary was far wider than most people knew. And it took me a long time to find this out because people were quiet about it. She became the pastoral listener to many who could not find an ear among the official leadership. She held confidences as well as anyone trained for the role. For a few years, as tensions rose, she stayed late many an evening to listen. She carried painful stories all by herself, a heavy load indeed. I personally wish she had better support during those years when she helped keep this church functioning in body and spirit. One thing that helped was they kept traveling. She continued to love to travel. For instance, they flew twice to Europe on the Concorde. They trekked to museum after museum, even ones that were hard to get to, like Stonehenge. And we all know that Joy had a hard time moving around, but she would keep walking for miles and never complain. In 1989, Bill had a heart attack and retired. Now, they had been planning to retire to Cornwall, England, so she retired as well, and off they went to a condo on a cliff overlooking the wild coast. For 6 very happy years, Bill painted, and they were both active, but Joy just loved this university of the third age. She always was so interested in learning. This was a national social group in England where people taught one another what they knew, and of course, each person was an expert in their own thing, so they had a wonderful time teaching each other. But then when Bill came ill again, Joy decided he'd get better health care in Nashville, so they moved back here in 1995. So they picked up many of their old routines. They came back to church, traveled when they could. Joy loved going to Hawaii with all its beautiful tropical flowers. Joy started what many of you call the salons at her house, where women could come for tea, scones, and almond cake and discuss the meaty philosophical and political topics of the day. She was not a fiction reader. She was a nonfiction reader and really wanted to keep up. She made new friends when she joined a covenant group at church that met at her place when it became difficult for her to go elsewhere. During the anti-immigrant reaction to 9/11 in 2001, she and Bill decided they needed to become U.S. citizens. I mean, they'd already lived here for 30 years. But almost 90, Joy passed her citizenship exams and became a proud carrier of 3 passports, the English, the Canadian, and the U.S. Joy and Bill each put the other first during their 7 decades of marriage. They both said they put the other one first, and they did. Maybe that's the secret of teamwork. Their love was mutual and special. They raised a family, made decisions, and had fun together. But Bill was not the only person that felt Joy put them first. Others in her family and many of her friends felt that way as well. So, let us continue to celebrate Joy Chipping's life. I'm going to invite you, if you are so moved, to come to one of these microphones. You can come up here or go there. Or if you raise your hand, I'll bring that microphone to you. And I would love it if you could share one of your memories. I know you have lots, but if somebody would think about it and share one memory, that would be great. And then we could hear from lots of people. Does anybody want to start?
Hi, I'm Lynn Cushing and know most everybody here. Gina and I came to this church when we were in our 20s, and the first experience that we had was coming to the women's group meeting. Someone who was somebody I knew in graduate school was a member here. She and her husband were members at the time, and invited me to come. She said, "Oh, you're going to love it." So we came, and it was Joan Moore was there, so it was the first time I met Joan and Joy, and they were asked to give a 10-minute presentation on their lives, or not on their whole lives, but on an eventful, life-changing, life-altering experience out of their lives. And what I remember about Joy is that it was on World War II, and they were in London during the Blitz, as Reverend Gale mentioned, and it was a great story that she told. She was a great storyteller. I think everybody who knew her knows that, and so Joan gave her presentation, and Joy, I remember she made a poster board with pictures on it and everything. It was quite the thing, and the meeting ended up going way, way long because one person evidently thought 10 hours instead of 10 minutes, so we were there a really long time. But but we had such a great time, and just personally, it meant a lot to June and to me that Joy and Joan, both being older women, were very accepting of June and me. So we were the first out couple, I guess, at the lesbian couple at the church, and it was a little bit scary at the time. So it was wonderful to have people of their generation have their approbation. So it's the reason we're members of this church has a lot to do with Joy and Joan. Thank you.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you very much for coming to this memoriam. It's a very sad day for me. I'm just tore up about it, obviously. A little story. During the war, a house across the street from where my mother lived, they dropped a one-ton bomb on it, but the amazing thing was that the bomb never blew. It never blew up. It fell through 3 stories and landed in the basement, I guess, of that house. And obviously, if it had gone off, we wouldn't have had Joy, wouldn't have had me, Andre, nobody. It was an unbelievable thing, unbelievable. And Mom said that probably for 5 years after the war, they had serious rations in Europe. It was a terrible scenario. She was probably one of the most dynamic persons I've ever met in my life, just turned out to be my mom. And unfortunately for me, of course, they moved to Nashville. Good for them. But of course, living 1,000 miles away, I never got to see them that often. And thank you very much, Reverend, for your kind words and your... Thank you. Thank you all.
Short. I would like to just bring back Joy for a minute, because when I met with her, she just drew me in like she had known me forever. And she said, "You must come to my tea." I said, "Wow, that sounds like fun." And so I didn't know her a whole lot, but connecting with her, when I did see her, she always made me feel important and whole and appreciated and intelligent, because she never talked down to anyone. She talked as if you are on the same level with her, and so it made you rise. So I appreciate having her as an acquaintance and a wonderful guide.
I remember Joy, me coming over here once a month for a long time to help her fold the monthly newsletters and get them ready to mail, with her cat on the shelf, and Joy always wanting to be sure that the entrance to the church looked good, and she was always dusting and organizing and making the entrance to the church for anybody who was coming in here for whatever reason. And when Joy couldn't get out very well, she invited our covenant group to come to her house. And she always had tea and a goodie, and we had wonderful conversations in the group. And then I would wait with Joy afterwards, when everybody else left, for my bus to come, and we would just talk about lots of things that we were both interested in. I miss Joy. We were very lucky to have her here.
Oh, I have it. Can I bring it to anyone else?
Well, I just wanted to say that one thing that amazed me about Joy was how much she kept up with everyone, even though she didn't get out. We would go to visit her, and she would say, well, have you heard this or that? And like, I had no idea. So I got the church news from Joy. She was really very blessed with the gift of relationship, and I'm really going to miss that about her.
I remember that when I was going through a very sad divorce, and I had moved to a new house in a new location and was feeling pretty lonesome. I don't remember if it was Lynn and June or Joan, I forget who told me about the women's group, but I started going, and it was something I looked forward to, and I felt empowered, I think is the right word, and very like I had a home, away from home of supportive women. It was really meant a lot to me during that period of time.
Can I bring this to anyone else?
I'm Matthew Ramsey. I was privileged to be a member of the Covenant group that met at Joy's apartment and drank her wonderful tea and ate her biscuits, as we learned to call them. And Joy was a person of strong opinions. She did not mince words. And I remember at one of the last meetings, she may have said this more than once, but it stays in my mind. She said, when I was young, I used to listen to Herr Hitler on the radio. And let me tell you, this one sounds exactly like him. I miss that voice.
I'm Carolyn Turner, and I'm probably the newest member here. And I was fortunate enough to be in the Covenant group with Joy, and so soon after I joined the church here, then started meeting in her apartment. She enjoyed opera and thought the only news station that should ever be aired was BBC. That's the only one she wanted to hear about. And I do feel fortunate in that although our Covenant group had dwindled, we happened to be at her house on her 97th birthday. and sorry that she didn't make it to the 98th, but she welcomed me, and I felt like in no time at all I had known her a long time because she made me feel so welcome.
Last call.
Hi. I'm going to read a poem that was written by Margaret Meggs, who was in the women, not the salon group at Joy's house, because she lives in Montana now and had moved with her husband there. But before that, she was active in the women's group here in the 80s and the 90s, which was the one that I mentioned where I met. And we both kind of found our way here through different paths, I guess it was. And Margaret was always very fond of Joy, and every time she came, her mother is in Adams, Tennessee, so she comes at least once a year to visit with her mother. And every time she came, she would often stay with us, but she always wanted to see Joy, so even though she was here for a limited amount of time. And so she had hoped to be able to be here for this service, but wasn't able to do it. So she wrote a poem for me to read that I thought was really good. And just to give you a little background, Margaret's Wiccan, and sometimes the women's group in those days, in the 80s and 90s, would do some Wiccan-related rituals and things like that, kind of earth-centered spiritual tradition for those that don't know what that is. So I'm going to read this the best I can. It's entitled Pure Joy, in memory of Joy Chipping, 1920 to 2018. Bright soul, spinning off into the night, you once said everything stops at death, nothing left, nothing goes on. On that notion, I pondered through these years and decided, no matter, you go on in so many ways, through many folks, many thoughts, many hearts. The hands you touched, the food and wit and ideas you shared, conversations over tea and scones and jam, much cackling as we witches will. Ideas questioned, dissected, spun new outward into worlds beyond. Courageous, curious, witty, lively, oh dear one, you opened minds, challenged walls, tread fearlessly on paths that others shunned. Bright soul, spinning out into the night. Deeply thankful am I for your life and honor your brilliance for all time.
Joy Chipping, mother, grandmother, and friend of 4 generations, inspired those who knew her to live a life steered by strong values. The world is a better place because of the life she lived. And she taught her values in ways both obvious and mysterious. Andre told me this wonderful story about their household cat, who was kind of a, I'm on my own independent cat. And Joy was at their house a lot in the last year, convalescing. And of course, she brought with her and Bill's cat, which is kitty cat, right? Pussycat and Swish. Swish was her cat, big, fluffy, gorgeous cat. And Swish pretty much lived on Joy's lap while she was there. And their cat, the household cat, would kind of watch. This is strange. Well, after Joy passed, that cat started sitting on everybody's lap in the household, not Squish, the aloof cat. That cat had learned from Joy how to connect, how to give and receive love, friendship. And so she learned. Now, poor Squish is kind of still waiting for Joy to come home, and we're hoping she figures that out at some point. But all of us have learned things from this woman, observed them, had her a model in ways that we will keep alive in the years ahead. Joy was independent, but she was always putting people first, other people. She was direct and honest, but she never gossiped, saying, "Leave them to their own sorts." She always put people and their feelings before material need, and if someone felt wronged, she did her best to right it. Joy was very generous and would sacrifice anything for her family and friends. She suffered, she was in pain a lot, but she kept busy, she was always learning, and rarely complained. Joy Chipping lives on in us who remember her with love and to seek to live by the values that guided her. For it is a time to be born and a time to die. Today is a time to weep and a time to smile, a time to mourn and a time to dance. We mourn when we remember Joy's death, and we laugh when we remember her life. But the time to love her will not end. The time to keep her has passed, so we will weep and smile together, connected through her in love. May it be so. Now, at this time, I'm going to invite you to join me and the Chipping family as we walk out to the columbarium to inter Joy's ashes in the earth. We will all greet the family after that brief ceremony in the social hall, and I invite you to please continue sharing your memories with each other there and always. I will extinguish the chalice as I gather her ashes, and please follow me. Now, because I don't assume that everybody can go out there, we're going to go out these doors here, I am going to wear a microphone, and we are going to mic it so people sitting in here can hear. But anybody who would like to come out, please follow me. Doing good? Okay, I want to make sure that anyone inside can hear this. Can people hear it? Okay. We come to lay to rest the ashes of our beloved, Joy Moya Chipping, in this place of memory, always sitting at the edge of this church's lively community of memory and hope. Joy will always be remembered here, but not only here. When you are told that I am dead, do not believe it. Walk among the trees, and I will speak to you in the soft mystery song of the wind. Touch a leaf sprinkled with sunshine, and you will be touching me. Pick up a smooth, worn stone and throw it far into the sea. That will help you to understand that I am not dead, whether in your hand or in the sea. I am a child of the changing earth, changed and free. So with these ashes, we place our love for Joy, our mother, grandmother, friend, who lives in our hearts and will continue to live there as long as we each shall live. We will also place in our memories of Joy, who lives on in actions and will continue to live in all of us. Yet we also say goodbye to the joy that we knew. I invite you to say goodbye as you place some of the soil over these ashes, and Andre and Julian will begin. Now, I am going to do a blessing, but I invite all of you to please place soil in there if you would like, as we say goodbye. As we leave this place of memory, let us say farewell to our beloved. Let us forever remember Joy Chipping in love and see her in the 1,000 memories we share of our blessed times together. Blessed be, and amen.